Are you struggling with feelings of self-hatred and low self-worth? In this video, we explore the 7 signs that indicate you may be harboring feelings of self-hatred from a Buddhist perspective. Lesson 1. You feel hurt when others criticize you. Buddhism teaches us that the pain we feel when we are criticized is not caused by the criticism itself, but by our attachment to our ego. The ego is a false self that we create based on our experiences, beliefs, and desires. It is a mental construct that we use to define ourselves and to distinguish ourselves from others. The ego is not our true nature. Our true nature, according to Buddhism, is one of pure awareness and interconnectedness with all beings. When we are attached to our ego, we become overly identified with our thoughts, emotions, and experiences. We believe that our ego is who we are, and we become defensive when it is threatened. This is why criticism can be so painful. When someone criticizes us, it can feel as though they are attacking our very identity. Buddhism teaches us that this attachment to our ego is the root of our suffering. To overcome this attachment, Buddhism encourages us to cultivate self-compassion. Self-compassion involves treating ourselves with kindness and understanding, rather than judgment and criticism. It involves recognizing that we are all imperfect beings who make mistakes and experience setbacks. By cultivating self-compassion, we can learn to see criticism as an opportunity for growth, rather than a personal attack. One way to cultivate self-compassion is through mindfulness meditation. Mindfulness involves paying attention to our present moment experience without judgment. When we practice mindfulness, we can begin to observe our thoughts and emotions with a sense of detachment. We can see that they are not who we are, but rather temporary phenomena that arise and pass away. This can help us to let go of our attachment to our ego and to cultivate a more compassionate attitude towards ourselves. Loving kindness involves sending thoughts of love and compassion to ourselves and others. By repeating phrases such as, "May I be happy," "May I be healthy," "May I be at peace," we can begin to cultivate a sense of warmth and kindness towards ourselves. This can help us to see ourselves in a more positive light and to feel more deserving of love and respect. Buddhism also encourages us to practice forgiveness. Forgiveness involves letting go of resentment and anger towards ourselves and others. When we hold on to resentment and anger, we are only causing ourselves more suffering. By practicing forgiveness, we can release ourselves from this suffering and cultivate a sense of peace and acceptance. Forgiveness does not mean condoning harmful behavior or allowing others to treat us poorly. It simply means letting go of our attachment to anger and resentment. We can still set boundaries and assert ourselves when necessary, but we do so from a place of compassion and understanding, rather than anger and resentment. Feeling hurt when others criticize us is a common sign of self-hatred. However, Buddhism teaches us that this pain is not caused by the criticism itself, but by our attachment to our ego. To overcome this attachment, we can cultivate self-compassion through mindfulness and loving-kindness meditation. We can also practice forgiveness, letting go of resentment and anger towards ourselves and others. Lesson 2. You measure yourself against others. The problem with comparison is that it is inherently unfair. We are all unique individuals with our own strengths, weaknesses, and life experiences. When we compare ourselves to others, we are not taking into account the full picture of their lives. We may only be seeing their successes and not their struggles, or we may be comparing our own weaknesses to their strengths. This can lead to feelings of inadequacy and low self-esteem. Comparison can also lead to feelings of jealousy and resentment. When we see others succeeding in areas where we feel we are lacking, we may feel envious and bitter. This can create a negative cycle of thoughts and emotions that can be difficult to break free from. It is also important to remember that comparison is often based on an illusion. The images we see on social media, for example, are often carefully curated and do not reflect the full reality of a person's life. By recognizing this, we can begin to let go of unrealistic expectations and comparisons. In Buddhism, the concept of interdependence is emphasized. This means recognizing that we are all connected and that our actions affect others. When we compare ourselves to others, we are creating a sense of separation and disconnection. By cultivating a sense of interdependence, we can begin to see ourselves as part of a larger whole and find greater compassion for ourselves and others. The practice of comparing ourselves to others is a form of self-centeredness. It is based on the belief that our own happiness and success are more important than others. In Buddhism, this is seen as a form of ignorance that leads to suffering. By cultivating a more selfless attitude, we can begin to let go of comparisons and find greater peace and happiness. So the next time you find yourself comparing yourself to others, take a step back and practice mindfulness, self-compassion, gratitude, and interdependence. Remember that we are all on our own unique journey and that true happiness comes from within, not from external comparisons and validation. By recognizing when we are doing it and practicing mindfulness, self-compassion, gratitude, and interdependence, we can begin to overcome this habit and find greater peace and contentment in our lives. Lesson 3. You think too much about choices and things you do. Overthinking is often rooted in fear and insecurity. We may be afraid of making the wrong choice, of disappointing others, or of failing to meet our own expectations. We may also be insecure about our abilities and doubt our own worth. These negative thoughts and emotions can create a vicious cycle where we become trapped in our own minds, unable to make decisions or take action. Buddhism teaches us that the key to overcoming overthinking is to cultivate mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of being fully present in the moment, without judgment. When we are mindful, we are able to observe our thoughts and emotions without becoming attached to them. We can see them for what they are, temporary and fleeting. By practicing mindfulness, we can learn to quiet our minds and find peace in the present moment, rather than dwelling on the past or worrying about the future. One way to cultivate mindfulness is through meditation. Meditation involves sitting in stillness and focusing on our breath or a mantra. When our minds begin to wander, we gently bring our attention back to our breath or mantra. Through regular meditation practice, we can train our minds to become more focused and less prone to overthinking. Another way to cultivate mindfulness is through mindful movement, such as yoga or tai chi. These practices involve moving our bodies in a slow and deliberate way, while focusing on our breath and the sensations in our bodies. By engaging in mindful movement, we can learn to connect with our bodies and quiet our minds. When we are overly critical of ourselves and our choices, we create a barrier to our own happiness and well-being. Instead, Buddhism encourages us to treat ourselves with kindness and understanding. By cultivating self-compassion, we can learn to forgive ourselves for our mistakes and see them as opportunities for growth. One way to cultivate self-compassion is through loving-kindness meditation. This practice involves sending thoughts of love and kindness to ourselves and others. We can start by focusing on ourselves, repeating phrases such as, "May I be happy," "May I be healthy," "May I be at peace." By sending ourselves love and kindness, we can begin to cultivate a more positive relationship with ourselves. Self-care involves taking care of our physical, emotional, and spiritual needs. This can include activities such as exercise, getting enough sleep, eating healthy foods, spending time in nature, and engaging in hobbies and activities that bring us joy. By taking care of ourselves, we are sending ourselves the message that we are worthy of love and respect. One way to cultivate letting go is through the practice of non-attachment. Non-attachment involves accepting things as they are, without clinging to them or pushing them away. When we are non-attached, we can see things more clearly and make decisions based on wisdom rather than fear. Forgiveness involves releasing our resentment and anger towards ourselves and others. By forgiving ourselves for our mistakes and forgiving others for their transgressions, we can find peace and healing. By practicing mindfulness, we can learn to quiet our minds and find peace in the present moment. By cultivating self-compassion, we can learn to treat ourselves with kindness and understanding. By letting go of our attachments and embracing impermanence, we can find freedom from our fears and insecurities. Lesson 4. You are very tough on yourself. Cause of self-criticism is the belief that we must be perfect in order to be worthy of love and respect. This belief can lead us to set impossibly high standards for ourselves and to feel like failures when we inevitably fall short. Buddhism teaches us that perfection is an unattainable ideal and that true happiness comes from accepting ourselves as we are, flaws and all. Important practice for cultivating self-compassion is to treat ourselves with kindness and understanding. This means taking care of our physical, emotional, and spiritual needs and being gentle with ourselves when we make mistakes or experience setbacks. It also means forgiving ourselves for our past mistakes and letting go of resentment or guilt. In Buddhism, the practice of loving-kindness meditation is often used to cultivate self-compassion. This meditation involves repeating phrases of kindness and compassion towards oneself, such as, "May I be happy," "May I be healthy," "May I be at peace." By repeating these phrases, we can begin to internalize a sense of self-love and compassion. Another powerful practice for cultivating self-compassion is to connect with others. When we share our struggles with others and listen to their stories, we can begin to see that we are not alone in our suffering. This sense of connection can help us to feel more compassionate towards ourselves and others. In addition to these practices, there are many other tools and techniques that can help us to cultivate self-compassion. These include mindfulness meditation, journaling, therapy, and supportive relationships. The key is to find what works best for us and to make self-compassion a regular part of our lives. By becoming aware of our negative self-talk, challenging our beliefs, treating ourselves with kindness, and connecting with others, we can cultivate self-compassion and overcome self-hatred. Lesson 5. You think of the worst outcomes. This tendency to focus on the negative is often rooted in fear. We may fear failure, rejection, or disappointment, and so we unconsciously create scenarios in our mind in which these fears are realized. However, by doing so, we are creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. The mind is everything. What you think, you become. By focusing on negative outcomes, we are attracting negativity into our lives. To break free from this cycle of negative thinking, Buddhism offers several practices that can help. One of the most powerful is the practice of mindfulness. Mindfulness involves being fully present in the moment, without judgment. When we are mindful, we are able to observe our thoughts and emotions without becoming attached to them. This can help us to recognize when we are slipping into negative thinking patterns and to consciously choose to shift our focus towards more positive thoughts. Another practice that can be helpful in overcoming negative thinking is the cultivation of gratitude. When we focus on the things in our lives that we are grateful for, we are shifting our attention away from what we lack and towards what we have. This can help to create a more positive mindset and to counteract the tendency to always expect the worst. By setting positive intentions for ourselves and for others, we are creating a powerful force for good in the world. When we focus on creating positive outcomes rather than dwelling on negative ones, we are aligning ourselves with the energy of the universe and inviting abundance and joy into our lives. When we are able to extend compassion towards ourselves and towards others, we are creating a sense of connection and understanding that can help to counteract the negative effects of self-hatred. By recognizing that we are all imperfect beings who are doing the best that we can begin to cultivate a sense of empathy and kindness towards ourselves and towards others. It is important to recognize that overcoming negative thinking patterns takes time and practice. It is not something that can be achieved overnight. However, by committing to regular practice and by being patient and compassionate with ourselves, we can gradually shift our mindset and begin to cultivate a more positive outlook on life. By cultivating positive thinking patterns through practices such as mindfulness, gratitude, positive intentions, self-inquiry, compassion, and patience, we can begin to overcome this tendency and to create a more positive and fulfilling life for ourselves. Lesson 6. You reject kind words and compliments. When someone pays us a compliment or offers us kind words, it should be a moment of joy and connection. Accepting compliments can be a challenge. Instead of embracing the positive feedback, we may find ourselves deflecting it, dismissing it, or even rejecting it outright. This reaction may stem from a deep-seated belief that we are not worthy of love or respect, a belief that can be incredibly damaging to our mental and emotional well-being. In Buddhism, the concept of self-worth is closely tied to the idea of inherent goodness. According to Buddhist teachings, all beings possess an innate goodness that is pure and untainted by worldly concerns. This inherent goodness is known as Buddha nature, and it is the foundation of our worth as individuals. When we reject kind words and compliments, we are denying our own Buddha nature and undermining our sense of self-worth. To overcome this tendency to reject compliments, we must first recognize the underlying belief that is driving our behavior. Often, this belief is rooted in a sense of unworthiness or inadequacy, a feeling that we are not good enough or deserving of love and respect. This belief may have been formed in response to past experiences, such as criticism or rejection, or it may be the result of negative self-talk and self-judgment. Once we have identified this belief, we can begin to challenge it by cultivating a sense of self-compassion. Self-compassion involves treating ourselves with kindness, understanding, and forgiveness, just as we would treat a dear friend. When we practice self-compassion, we are acknowledging our own suffering and offering ourselves comfort and support. This can help to counteract the negative self-talk and self-judgment that may be driving our tendency to reject compliments. Another powerful tool for overcoming this tendency is mindfulness. Mindfulness involves being fully present in the moment, without judgment or distraction. When we are mindful, we are able to observe our thoughts and feelings with clarity and detachment, allowing us to see them for what they are, fleeting and impermanent. By practicing mindfulness, we can learn to recognize the thoughts and beliefs that are driving our behavior and to let them go. Buddhism offers a number of other practices that can help us to cultivate a sense of self-worth and to overcome our tendency to reject compliments. One such practice is loving-kindness meditation, which involves cultivating feelings of love, kindness, and compassion towards ourselves and others. By repeating phrases such as, "May I be happy," "May I be healthy," "May I be at peace," we can begin to shift our mindset from one of self-criticism to one of self-love. Gratitude involves recognizing and appreciating the good things in our lives, from the smallest blessings to the most profound. By focusing on what we are grateful for, we can shift our attention away from our perceived flaws and inadequacies, and towards the many positive qualities and experiences that make up our lives. This can help to counteract the negative self-talk and self-judgment that may be driving our tendency to reject compliments. To overcoming our tendency to reject kind words and compliments is to cultivate a deep sense of self-worth and self-love. This involves recognizing and embracing our inherent goodness and treating ourselves with the same kindness, compassion, and respect that we would offer to others. By doing so, we can begin to see ourselves in a more positive light and to accept compliments and kind words with grace and gratitude. By embracing our inherent goodness and treating ourselves with kindness and respect, we can learn to accept compliments and kind words with grace and gratitude, and to see ourselves in a more positive light. Lesson 7. You always look for validation from others. In Buddhism, the concept of self is considered an illusion. The idea of a fixed, unchanging self is seen as a source of suffering and attachment. When we cling to a particular image of ourselves, we become dependent on external validation to maintain that image. This dependence on validation from others can lead to a cycle of self-hatred and dissatisfaction. When we constantly seek validation from others, we are giving away our power. We are allowing other people's opinions to dictate our sense of self-worth. This can lead to feelings of insecurity and low self-esteem, as we are constantly seeking approval and validation to feel good about ourselves. Buddhism teaches us that true happiness and fulfillment come from within. By cultivating a strong sense of self-reliance, we can learn to trust our own judgment and find validation within ourselves. This does not mean that we should ignore the opinions of others or become completely self-absorbed. Rather, it means that we should not allow other people's opinions to define us. One way to cultivate self-reliance is to practice mindfulness. Mindfulness involves being fully present in the moment, without judgment. When we are mindful, we are able to observe our thoughts and emotions without becoming attached to them. This can help us to see our patterns of seeking validation and to develop a more compassionate and accepting attitude towards ourselves. Another way to cultivate self-reliance is to focus on our own values and goals. When we have a clear sense of what is important to us, we are less likely to be swayed by the opinions of others. By setting our own goals and working towards them, we can build a sense of purpose and fulfillment that is not dependent on external validation. Buddhism also teaches us the importance of compassion and loving kindness. When we cultivate compassion for ourselves and others, we are able to see beyond the surface level of appearances and to connect with the deeper truth of our shared humanity. This can help us to let go of our attachment to validation and to see ourselves and others in a more compassionate light. One practice that can help to cultivate compassion is the practice of loving kindness meditation. In this practice, we repeat phrases of kindness and compassion towards ourselves and others, such as, "May I be happy," "May I be healthy," "May I be at peace." By cultivating a sense of love and kindness towards ourselves, we can begin to let go of our need for external validation and to find a deeper sense of fulfillment within ourselves. Another practice that can help to cultivate self-reliance is the practice of reflection. By taking time to reflect on our thoughts, emotions, and actions, we can gain a deeper understanding of ourselves and our patterns of behavior. This can help us to see where we are seeking validation and to develop strategies for cultivating a more independent sense of self-worth. By surrounding ourselves with people who value us for who we are, rather than for what we can do for them, we can begin to develop a more positive and compassionate sense of self. Seeking validation from others is a common pattern of behavior that can lead to feelings of self-hatred and dissatisfaction. Buddhism teaches us that true happiness and fulfillment come from within, and that by cultivating self-reliance, compassion, and loving kindness, we can learn to find validation within ourselves. Through practices such as mindfulness, reflection, and loving kindness meditation, we can develop a more independent sense of self-worth and a deeper connection with ourselves and others. By recognizing these 7 signs of self-hatred, we can begin to cultivate a more positive relationship with ourselves. Through mindfulness, self-compassion, and positive thinking, we can learn to see ourselves in a kinder, more loving light. May you find peace and happiness on your journey towards self-discovery and enlightenment.